Welcome to the First Time Homebuyer Workshop with Julie Marion, and today I want you to know what you're going to get out of this video. As this is a new subject for us, as we start a new series of 5 in the area of property appraising. This is a fascinating area of home buying. Well, I guess it is for me because I'm super analytical, so I just love it. Now, I have to warn you, I'm going to leave you hanging here on this first content piece, so you need to come back because I can't explain the whole industry in just one short content piece. That's what we do. We drop these short content pieces so you learn one acorn of knowledge that you will need to be aware of while making informed decisions when buying your first house. Buyer's remorse is well over 50% annually, and it's a combination of things because this process of home buying involves many professional areas, all of which you as a first-time buyer are to learn and understand how it affects you immediately, short-term, and long-term. And there's 5 professions involved that can really affect your bottom line. One area that is key in understanding is the value of a home or a condo. It's to understand the subject topic of appraisal. So let's empower you here today. Property appraisals typically fall into 3 categories. There's the sales comparison approach, the income approach, and the cost approach. Each of these appraisal approaches has strengths and it has weaknesses. And the most appropriate approach depends on factors such as the type of property being appraised, the availability of data, and the purpose of the appraisal. Appraisers often use multiple approaches to reconcile their findings and arrive at a final estimate of the property's value. The appraisal industry came about just after the Roaring '20s. America was in a full-scale bliss. That's why historians refer to this area as the Roaring '20s. And you see it in pictures with women in their flapper dresses and jubilance abounded. It's infectious in these photographs. After all, the world had just closed out a horrific war, World War I, July 28, 1914 to November 11, 1918. That global conflict between 2 coalitions of the Allies and the Central Powers. Fighting took place throughout Europe, the Middle East, Africa, the Pacific, and parts of Asia, one of the deadliest wars in history. So this jubilation of hope and a brighter future existed in many hearts and souls. And as with most overabundant situations, think of one yourself right now. It all came crashing down. And that's because the 20s were filled with speculative financial investments. The famous date people would rather not remember is October 29, 1929, the day the stock market crashed. Your average Joe who had invested in the stock market lost everything. In fact, my mom tells me stories of parts of our family that lost everything, and really, they never recovered because after the crash there was a depression where it was hard to find work. But that's a story for a different time. So this crash set in motion a situation where people who had bought homes and were working and investing suddenly were out of work, their investments were worthless, and they could no longer afford to pay for their homes. Now, of course, this didn't happen on October 30th, but the stock market crash was the defining financial meltdown, and that set in motion that people started to default on their mortgages. And the banks that were holding the mortgage notes for these homes, these banks needed a way to value the property. And that created the industry of the appraisal field as we know it today. Now, this has happened a few other times in our more modern era, but let's focus on the components of the appraising methods today. So there are 3 types of appraisals. There's the sales comparison approach or the market approach, and that is a method that involves comparing the subject property to similar properties that have recently sold in the same area. Adjustments are made for differences in the features, the size, the condition, the location. That helps estimate the subject's property value. It's also called the market approach. At the foundation of this approach, and this is key, it's a methodology that relies on the principle of substitution, which suggests that a buyer would not pay more for one property than the cost of acquiring an equally desirable substitute property. Appraisers identify recently sold properties that are similar to the subject property in all of the different components and features. The appraisers make some adjustments to those sales prices based on those comparable features to account for differences between them and the subject property, essentially creating a level playing field, an apple to apple rather than an apple to an orange. These adjustments consider factors such as differences in size, like I said, amenities, condition, location, and market trends. This approach is widely used for residential properties and is particularly effective when there are markets that provide a sufficient number of comparable sales. And it is the benchmark for which banks rely upon whether or not to fund your mortgage. Then there is the income approach or income capitalization approach. This method is commonly used for commercial properties and rental properties. It estimates the property's value based on its income producing potential, and this involves analyzing the property's rental income, operating expenses, and capitalization rate to determine its present value. The appraiser determines the property's value by capitalizing its net operating income, NOI. This involves dividing the property's NOI by the capitalization rate, which reflects the return an investor expects to receive on the investment. Appraisers analyze the property's rental income, operating expenses, vacancy rates, lease terms, and market rents to calculate the NOI. And they consider market conditions and they, of course, consider the investor's expectations. The last approach is the cost approach, or something known as replacement cost approach. This method determines the property's value by estimating the cost to replace or reproduce it, considering depreciation and obsolescence. It's often used for unique properties or properties with limited market comparables, such as a special purpose building or a new construction. Appraisers estimate the cost of constructing a similar property from scratch, current construction costs, labor materials, and overhead expenses. They deduct the accrued depreciation, which can include physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, and external obsolescence. This approach is used for special purpose properties, as I said, and new construction properties, or properties where there is a limited number of sales comparables. And it's the baseline for the property based on physical characteristics and construction costs. So those are the three approaches. However, let's work backwards here. The cost approach is the idea of the replacement cost of something another industry uses in the home buying process, but they don't order an appraisal. So hang on here, I'll show you what I mean. So when you buy a home insurance is required, and they require that the home insurance that you must purchase is at least 80% of the replacement value. So how do they get to this number, you may ask, if they don't order this type of appraisal? Well, that industry goes off your final sales price. But I suspect it will start to be a little bit varied because we have so many areas that are subject to flooding and climate-related disasters. So it's a good idea to come back and take a listen to some of our urban planning sections so you know what to do and where to go to get the skinny on these issues. Now, the income approach is one for commercial properties, and that appraisal includes the income and the rate of return that investors expect to receive in order to arrive at a value. So this is interesting. Now, this approach is for commercial, but you could use this in your own home buying process if you're thinking, well, hey, maybe I'll buy a property that has an additional unit on site or a duplex. That might be a good idea to borrow some of this commercial appraising concepts for you so you can build your real estate portfolio. And I say this because I've been reading a lot about something and hearing about something called a side hustle or the gig economy. Maybe it's not for you. I don't know you, so you decide. Now, the sales comparison approach is the gold standard of residential appraisal, and the bank will be relying on it tremendously. The bank orders the appraisal, you pay for it, you get to see the final product, but no, you do not get to talk with the appraiser, and this report will determine whether or not the bank will fund your mortgage loan. And as I said, it's based on sales in the area.
and how big the area is and where it's located. Is it on the edge, or is it a government boundary? Is it a community? Is it a neighborhood? Is it in a rural area? What are the parameters of this? Well, we will talk about that in the other variables of appraising. So come back and listen to the next content piece. But for right now, let's do some sleuthing. Because when you buy your house, the bank will order this appraisal, as I've said, and this appraisal will be a third-party independent professional. They have licenses, exams, continuing education, and they need to complete all of these things annually in order to be able to produce these reports. They are the sounding board for the bank to make sure the bank doesn't lose money or lend you too much on a specific property in case you default on the loan. Now, why is this in place? Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, when there were financial meltdowns like October 29th and the banks were holding all of these notes on the property, they had to have a way to value them so they could sell the property, because banks are not in the business of being property owners. They're in the business of lending money. So it's imperative that the bank be able to loan you your mortgage as long as the property is worth the loan amount. Makes sense, right? Well, what about you? So say you're putting down between 5 and 50% down payment, most likely, and the bank is having this appraisal done. Let's just say you put down 5% of the loan on a $600,000 home, which is $30,000. Now the loan is $570,000, and the bank wants to make sure the house is worth $570,000. That means the appraisal value needs to be at $570,000. Fast forward, you hit hard times, and it looks like you're going to lose the house to foreclosure. So the bank is going to want to sell the house. What number do you think they care about most? $570,000, right? Because that's the amount of the loan. And you will have forfeited your $30,000 because you didn't comply with the commitment to repay the loan, and the bank is in first position to take the property as their asset. Now, that's one thing. Now, let's get to a few more things here. This $570,000, well, how does an appraiser arrive at it? Remember the definition I said it was based on recent solds, and because no two homes are exactly alike, mostly the location is a really big judgment call. It's a gray area of real estate. And what about all the other features of the house? I hear all the time, natural light, open floor plan, current paint colors. Well, none of those components are on the appraiser's form, and that form is available at the federal government. And a lot of the features that first-time buyers think are worth so much, they're not on the form. And that means that even if there are some that are on there, it's one tiny little line and doesn't really influence the overall value of the house. And it's so disheartening. So this is great for the bank, right? They have this procedure set up to protect them, making sure their investment is on pretty solid ground. A professional is reviewing or covering them. But what about you? So how will you know if the house is worth what the seller is asking? Aha! Now this is where the rubber meets the road. Who are you working with? As a salesperson, right? That's what real estate agents are. So their goal is to get the sale to go through. This is why you need to know more than the real estate agent. Unless the agent can verify they have been trained in appraising and they produce a report for you indicating the value of the house that you are looking at, right? Well, not very many real estate agents are also appraisers. And the home buying process timeline doesn't allow you to hire an appraiser to get a report and then make the offer. So how will you know if you're not overpaying, or how do you understand the features that the bank thinks bring value? This is a key interview question you might want to ask your potential real estate salesperson. It matters what they know. Now, getting back to the appraisal, the components of value in a home are key to be able to recognize and know, so that you as a first-time homebuyer will fully understand how that property will be valued before you step foot in an open house and meet the salesperson that's going to get you to the closing table. And that's when they get paid. Now, I hope I didn't upset you or disillusion you, but really, this could be an area that if the market goes down, as it has in the past, and it even happened to me in the early 2000s, you will be saying, well, that's great for the bank. They're protected, but I just lost a bunch of money, and that is not a fun feeling. There's also a lot more to the appraisal field, and we're just getting started. So that's our 15 minutes of home buying knowledge, just another acorn of knowledge for you today. Homework. Yes, you have homework. I want you to start noticing what the housing prices are in your area, even if you are not ready to buy. This is when you start to educate yourself, and this is on you guys, because there are 5 professions that you will come in contact with, and all of them are salespeople, transactional people who will be more than happy to help you with the transaction, but you're CEO of your home buying journey. We are here to help so you make the right decision for you, and you are empowered into the land of 32% of home buyers that do not have home buyer's remorse. You can do this, and we're excited for you. Come join us in our free class entitled Home Buying Chaos and Wrap, where it explains who does what and why. So as soon as you walk into that open house or fill out a form or pick up the phone, you are in charge. We also have a paid class, but honestly, I want you to get to know me and see if what I'm talking about is helping you. There are so many gray areas in real estate, and I believe this is where home buyer's remorse can start. So you can check that out. Until next time, from the team at the First Time Homebuyer Workshop with Julie Marion, bye for now.